Alright, Vispo Collab Ride Lines are here. At least 2 of them this time, so let's begin. But first, a card of the day that is for Lewin, which is Nose Drive Valken, which is a grade 1 with AK power and the skill is Count Rearguard. If your grade 3 Vanguard was placed this turn plus 5k, so being a 13k attacker or booster, but mainly for the second skill where auto back row rearguard. When your Vanguard is placed from deck this turn attacks, cost count +1, stand this unit, move this to an open rearguard to the front row, and until the end turn, retire this unit. Wish this works with Rebel Dress, but unfortunately Rebel Dress rides from hand, so meaning that only Lewin can really use this for standard, because Lewin's the only one that can superior ride from deck, and the fact that you could just move this to the front row as a 13k attacker makes this pretty good, and possibly any other future superior ride from decks. And now to the new Vispo ride lines, which are all dual nation, being Vispo and another nation. We're gonna start off with Lyrical. Here's the starter, the first map, Reno Shinomiya. With the grade 1 AK power, birth of rookie idol Reno Shinomiya. With the skill of Count, if your Vanguard is Vispo, this card gets this ability. Auto when rolled upon by a grade 2 Shinomiya, look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 Vispo or normal order from among them, reveal it and put it in your hand, of course shuffle your deck. And based on this skill, yes, this is going to be an order heavy deck, which might incline you to play this as a Lyrical deck more than a Vispo deck. In which we go to the grade 2 with 10k power, chill time with Shucha-chan Reno Shinomiya, which has the skill of Count. If your Vanguard is Vispo, this card gets all this following ability. When rolled upon by the grade 3 Reno Shinomiya, search your deck for 1 Samir Kaga and call it to rearguard and of course shuffle your deck, which is of course going to be the main support card. With the second section of the ability where Count rearguard, if you play normal order this turn plus 5k, regardless you mainly use this for the ride deck skill. In which we go to Perfect Aims Reno Shinomiya, which is the grade 3 with 10k power and the skill is Count Vanguard during your turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least a grade 3, you can play 2 orders this turn, more inclining to play this as a Lyrical deck since Lyrical has more generic normal orders. In which the second skill of Act Vanguard once per turn costs Soul Blast 1, look at top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 normal order, reveal it and put it to your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Very helpful of course. With the last skill of Auto Vanguard, when this card attacks costs Counter Blast 1, choose up to the same number of rear cards equal to the number of orders you played this turn, return to the hand, then choose the same number that were put to hand and call them to rearguard. So basically you play 1 order, you bounce 1 to call 1, you play 2, you bounce 2 to call 2. And since this deck has to play orders, you're gonna have some weird lineup. Not only that, you have to play them from hand, and another thing is you're only doing it for basically another attack and possibly 2 without extra power, and it just depends on the order at this point. That's why I'm saying you might play this more as a Lyrical deck, because Lyrical itself has more options to play. In which we go to her main support card, Freedom Violence Simmer Kaga, which is a grade 2 with 10k power and the skill is Count. If your Vanguard is Vispo, this card gets all the following abilities. Auto, if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3, you can also pay this cost as Energy Blast 3 instead of placed on rearguard Counter Blast 1. But the skill is search your deck or drop zone for 1 hand over event helper Payo Neko and call it to rearguard in the same column as this unit, and if you search your deck before shuffle it. And these Vispo collab cards are going to have these type of pairs support. In which the second section of the skill is Auto Rearguard, when this card boosts his hand over event helper Penoneko. If you play an order this turn, plus 5k into the end of the battle. If you played at least 2 orders, counter charge 1. I mean, this is an okay support pair so far, but of course you just have to play it because it's part of the lineup. In which we go to the hand over event helper Penoneko, which is the grade 1 with power and the skill is Count. If your Vanguard is Vespo, this card gets all the following: Count, Guardian, Shield plus 5k, or the second part where Auto Rearguard, at the end of this card boosts the Simmer Kaga cost, put 2 rearguards in the same column as this unit to soul to choose a normal order from your drop zone and put it back to your hand. Very helpful since it lets you recycle, but unfortunately you have to play it with the grade 2. So all I have to say is that this is just an okay pair. In which you go to the order lineup of It's Alright, yes that's literally the name, and it's normal order, and you play it for free. You may soul charge 1 and then choose one of your units, it gets plus 5k power into the end of turn, and then to the end of turn, cost, discard a card from your hand, choose a copy of itself from the drop zone and put it back to your hand. This is a very helpful one because you could actually just recycle itself, which will basically set you up for the next turn, and the cool thing is that you can play 2 copies of these in 1 turn. It's just too bad you can't combine this with the Lyrical stuff because this is a Vispo nation, so if you play this as a Vispo deck, you cannot play the Lyrical stuff. but it is on personal preference. In which we play Good Luck Have Fun, which is another normal order that is grade 1, and you look at top 5 cards of your deck to choose up to one Blissful from among them, reveal it and put it in your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Once again, you cannot play this with the lyrical one, but this does add some consistency in a way along with the other ones, since both of them just basically search and recycle, and that's basically the idea of both of them. But other than that, it doesn't really do much, so it is really up to you if you want to play this as a lyrical ride line or a visible ride line. And that's it for the lyrical section, so time for the dark state section of the first map, Beni Yakumo. Here's the starter, in which we go to Rookie Castle Lord Beni Yakumo, which is of course the grade 1 with K power with the skill of if your Vanguard is Vestal, it gets all the following abilities, where auto, when rolled upon by the grade 2 Beni Yakumo, you may call this to rear guard, in which the second skill is auto rear guard. When this card attacks or boosts, this card gets a Psyche power into the end of the battle, and at the end of the battle, put this to soul. This is basically the same thing as Jewel Neal. You ride the grade 2, call this card from soul, just to be a 13k attacker or booster, just to put it back in soul. Pretty good. In which we go to the grade 2 with 10k power, Queen of Underling Beni Yakumo, which has the skill of if your Vanguard is visible, it gets all the following ability. Auto, when rolled upon by the grade 3 Beni Yakumo, search your deck for one Noa Kurumi and call it to rear guard and force shuffle her deck, which is of course the main partner to her. With the second skill of auto, when placed on rear guard, meaning that you can now run more than one copy of hers. Cost, put a card from your hand to soul to draw a card, and this card gets a 5k power in the end of the turn, which is actually going to be very helpful for the deck, since being dark state, this is going to focus around soul. And spoiler alert, it's going to play very similar to Boral, because the grade 3 with 13 power Sweet Night Blood Moon Beni Yakumo has the skill Auto Vanguard. At the start of your battle phase, your opponent's Vanguard loses 5k power for every 5 card in soul. If you have 10 or more, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and you may put that into soul. Draining your opponent's power is already pretty nasty, so I already like that, especially when your whole front row could just gang up on your opponent's Vanguard. But the second skill is Auto Vanguard. When this card attacks, cost counterblast 1, perform all of the following based on the number of cards in soul. Boral effect basically. 4 or more, choose one card from your soul, call it to rear guard. 9 or more, drive +1. 13 or more, crit +1. And note, if you have 13 cards in soul exactly at the time you play this cost, you still get the 1 crit despite getting the 4 or more superior call. It's not in order of sequence. You already have the 13, meaning that you're going to get the crit, and even if you get the call from the 4, you're going to go back to 12, but you still get the crit because you got the 13 by then. And that goes for the same for the 9. Overall, this is basically the same as Boral, but a little better, because this one minuses your opponent's Vanguard power, which is more than I could say for what Boral can do, even though Boral can basically still give the power to your rear guards, which is still fine. But unlike Boral, this one can get an early game multi-attack already, just by having at least 4 cards in soul. And you also get the +1 card from hand, which is the same thing from the drive check, but Boral is the draw, and both of them have the crit +1. Overall, this does require less soul, but I would have to say this is a little better than Boral if I'm going to compare it with that. And overall, it's not too bad, and I already would say play this as a dark state ride line. In which we go to her main support of Sugar Nut Noa Kurumi, which is a grade 2 with 10k power, and the skill is if your Vanguard is visible, it gets all the following abilities. Auto, if your Vanguard is at least at grade 3, you can pay this cost with Energy Blast 3 instead of on place on rear guard, counter blast 1. Search your deck or drop zone for one Fancy Devil Army Ruro and call it to rear guard in the same column as this unit. If you search your deck, shuffle it, so basically the same as the lyrical one. I'm pretty sure all the nations are going to have this for the visible decks. And the second skill is count, if your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, if you have 2 or more copies of Ruro and Soul, this card gives 10k power and it's active on your opponent's turn as well. I say overall it's not too bad as a plussing engine, but unfortunately it only synergizes with one particular card. In which we go to Fancy Devil Army Roro, which is the grade 1 with K power, and the skill is if your Vanguard is visible, gets all the following ability, Evil Plushie. Auto, when placed on rear guard, choose a card from a drop zone and put its soul, which is of course going to be very helpful. With the second skill of Auto Rear Guard, at the end of this unit boosts Sugar Nut Noa Kurumi, cost, put 2 rear guards in the same column as this to soul, and draw a card, aka itself, along with basically Kurumi. This is going to be very helpful because of course you're putting more cards in soul. The grade 2 ready calls Kurumi, which Kurumi will call this, and this card on place will put a card to soul, which will be 4 cards in soul, and then the second part of its skill where you put 2 more cards in soul will make it a total of 6, so then will minus your opponent's 5k, but with some additional support, aka doing the dark state style of soul charging, you can easily reach the 9 or 13 in the same turn. I say this is a decent engine for soul charging, but you can still play this as a full-on dark state deck. In which we finally go to the trigger lineup with the over trigger called Crunch Time, which has the additional ability of choose one of your units, crit +1 to end turn, or choose a card from damage zone and heal it. I say it's basically a shittier version of the Stokea one. And honestly, I might rather play the Nation over trigger over this, if I'm playing basically the Nation deck over the Vispo deck. Even the Cray Elemental one is better. And here's the PG called Cover. And finally, since the commercial revealed it, we're getting to encounter Venus Luquier in this set, without the Asia Circuit Trio. Wow. Which is going to be part of the Tuesday stream with a Emma ride line for Vispo. And Thursday we got the Dark State Cross Epic ride line of Sacrifice class. So that's it for the new Vispo ride lines of Darkstate and Lyrical. What do you guys think of them? Honestly, it's another collab ride line. I honestly don't really care too much about it, but the Darkstate one is a little interesting enough and very playable, in fact, that you can play it as a full-on Darkstate deck. And basically, if you like playing Boral, you might like playing this deck because this one might be a little better. As for Lyrical, I'm not entirely too sure, but I do like the design of them. That's all I will have to say. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.